We're talking NFL draft here on the Too Deep NFL podcast. Eric Eager from Sumer Sports, Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network with you, Soren Petro. Thanks for joining us here as we look back on the NFL draft. What to expect now? Are the Bears a playoff team after what they got done? Did the Eagles fix all their problems in the secondary? How about the Lions? Was DB what they needed as well? Are they ready to be the NFC's best? Is it clear the 49ers are going to be moving on from Deebo Samuel, Brandon Aiyuk? Why did the Falcons do what they did? Why did they do what they did? Did the Giants blow it by not taking a quarterback? Have the Chiefs fixed their offensive issues? Do the Cowboys they even have a plan? And there's a shakeup at the desk of CBS when it comes to your pregame show. We talk about it right now here on the Too Deep NFL podcast.
You're listening to the Too Deep Podcast, the most complete analysis of the National Football League, breaking down the NFL like no one else can. Too Deep is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Eric Eager is the vice president of research and development for Sumer Sports. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Too Deep is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Too Deep Football Podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Back here on an NFL draft edition of the Too Deep NFL Podcast. Jeff, Eric, let's start with the Chicago Bears. The draft began with them. They only had 4 picks, but are they now a team that won 8 games last year and adds what is the top quarterback in the draft, adds one of the top playmakers? Jeff, are they now a playoff team?
I will say yes. I'm a little bit on the fence about it just because that division probably is going to be the best division in football next year, given the most competitive division in football, given what Detroit's become, given what Green Bay can become. Minnesota is probably the best team that might end up last place in their division. They could easily be a 9-10 win team if they're able to get some solid quarterback play. But yeah, I'm excited about what Chicago can be. I'm a Caleb Williams believer. As the draft process went on, the pre-draft process went on, I became a bigger believer in Rome Odunze, just the way he carries himself, and he's a legit player. And then you look at what's there. I mean, like, it's pretty much the blueprint that the Chiefs gave Patrick Mahomes to a certain extent. Like, obviously, Travis Kelce was a Hall of Fame player. They don't have that kind of caliber guy, or Tyreek Hill, but DJ Moore's a really good receiver. Keenan Allen's a really good receiver. Cole Kmet's a really good tight end. DeAndre Swift is a really good running back. The offensive line has gotten better. The defense was one of the best defenses in the league in the second half of the season. So you're taking a quarterback who has immense talent, and you're asking him just to be a distributor, to make plays when he has to. And I think that ultimately that should be enough. I mean, you look at who made the NFC playoffs last year. There were a couple teams down the stretch that the Falcons were in it. The Saints were in it. There were 7-win teams. I think the Bears are going to be a 10-win team, and they'll be in it.
Am I wrong? The Bears didn't get to 8 wins. They only won 7. Is Tommy right?
I think they got to 7. Yeah, I think that sounds right.
I thought they got
That's
to
right.
8.
The Bears won 7. Same as the Vikings. The Vikings picked 11. The Bears picked 9.
Okay.
Yep.
I stand corrected, Tommy. Thanks for keeping me on my toes.
Yeah, so
Go ahead, Eric.
the Bears had a chance to win 8, but they went to Lambeau, and the famous Justin Fields that everybody wanted to keep scored 9 points against a Joe Barry defense. I think the only issue is, like, let's add it up. You have at least one team from the South, obviously. Probably is going to be the Falcons. Could be the Saints. So there's 2 teams there. You have the West, which is the Rams, the Niners, and the Seahawks, probably 2 there. So now you already have 2 wild cards out of the way, and the Packers and the Lions are already like better than the Bears. So, and then you have the NFC East, which is Cowboys, Philly, and then some team. Washington had a phenomenal draft, I thought, and the Giants were in the playoffs 2 years ago. So as much as it's a numbers game in the AFC, the NFC is starting to creep up a little bit. And I agree with Jeff. I think there's good elements to the roster. I agree with like all the players he's listed. I think Brian Poles has done a really good job. He's got a few misses, but mostly hits. But it's going to be harder than we think there. And, Eberflus is still there. Like, I don't think Eberflus has necessarily shown us enough to warrant some of this optimism. I think Poles has been pretty good. Eberflus is a question mark.
I agree. And Caleb Williams, are we that convinced? Like, is this Andrew Luck? He's good enough to take a team in the first year, Jeff? I mean, are you that sold on Caleb Williams?
I don't think he has to be Andrew Luck, but like Andrew Luck, there are elements there that Andrew Luck showed up in the NFL. It wasn't just like he was some phenomenal player. He had Reggie Wayne was still there. I think Dallas Clark was still there. The defense was still pretty decent. The offensive line was fairly good. I mean, there were things that were in place there that was a team that was 2 or 3 couple years removed from being, Super Bowl contenders. And so, yeah, again, for me, it's more about, and I said this a couple of weeks ago, like, I don't think there's some big mystery about how you get young quarterbacks to play well in the NFL. You give them a really good supporting cast and you minimize the expectations placed upon them. And so, again, that's what Josh Allen found in Buffalo. That's what Lamar Jackson found in Baltimore. I think I'm encouraged. Eric makes a great point about Eberflus, but I'm encouraged that the defense is coming around. I think that's going to be the biggest factor in whether they become a playoff team is, can they play good defense in a division where you're going to see 2 really good offenses? That's going to really set them apart.
I'm not gonna say Patrick Mahomes or Trevor Lawrence, but Josh Allen or Trevor Lawrence. Caleb Williams is closer to who?
Josh Allen or Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah. Or is it below Trevor Lawrence?
Do we even think he's Trevor Lawrence yet?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Maybe that's a great point. Is he below Trevor Lawrence as to what he will be?
I think he'll be closer to Josh Allen.
Yeah, I think. I mean, Lawrence is disappointed only because our expectations for the top pick are sky high. I think that Lawrence has been fine. And if Williams ends up playing as well as Lawrence has the first 3 years of his career, the Bears will be in the playoffs.
Yeah, they better be. I'll put it that way. Or certainly Eberflus is gone. And maybe Ryan Poles is as well. Both those picks, along with a bunch of quarterbacks, were all part of a draft that was offense, even more than we predicted when we did our mock draft last week, Jeff. Is this the new world? That offense is going to rule the day. Offense, like tackles get pushed up ahead of middle linebackers and guards and centers. Back when we were kids, you could take a guard 5. You don't ever do that now. Is offense going to be pushed up ahead of defense?
Well, look, it's quarterback pushed it up, right? And so you had 6 teams that needed to find quarterbacks. And so we've never seen that happen where you go 6 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks. And then I think it was just more circumstantial. I think, one, you didn't have the depth of edge rushers you don't normally have. Bucky Brooks was on our show a few weeks ago. He talked about how much that position has changed in terms of how fast the ball is coming out. You didn't have – I was surprised cornerbacks felt like they did. I thought that was, a guy like Quinion Mitchell, guys like Cooper DeJean, guys like – or DeJean, however you pronounce it. I thought those were guys who would be taken higher. But – again, you didn't have dominant safeties. You didn't have, linebackers become a position that's really gotten pushed back unless you're really somebody who's special. So, yeah, I think that I don't think it's because of the way they're playing football. It's because of the positions that are being affected by it. I think that's the bigger thing I see.
Offense, offense, offense. Eric, is that what the draft is going to start to become?
No, I think that, it's just about where the talent is. In the Patrick Mahomes draft, it was almost all defense. And it just kind of ebbs and flows to where the talent is, I think. And, we had a draft 2 years ago that was basically one quarterback in the first round and none in the top 20. So I think it's where the talent is.
Yeah, I think it is going to get pushed up. This was an extreme case, but you have to be able to score. There are so few possessions in the NFL now. You have to be able to score in the last 2 minutes. And I know a lot of people are talking about, I'm not saying Caleb Williams plays like Josh Allen. I'm saying I think Josh Allen is MVP caliber. Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback, right? That's all I'm getting at. Obviously, size-wise, Caleb Williams isn't big, but you have to be able to score, and you have to be able to score quick, because one of your possessions and a half oftentimes is going to be 150. And can you get your ass down the field? Because if you can't, you're screwed.
Yeah, but the Chiefs just won a championship with their worst offensive team in the Andy Reid era, right?
Yes.
Or in Patrick Mahomes era. I mean, they won because of their defense. They don't have their defense, they're not winning.
And it was number 7.
Oh.
Right? So it was still well into the top half. And Patrick Mahomes was still the guy that when he needed to get a score, he would go down and get a score. When he needed to convert a fourth, he would convert a fourth. I hear what you're saying. Yes, this isn't the best year to say, oh, the number one offense always wins. That's not what I'm getting at. But I do think the game, as Eric has been beating the drum for a long time, is more and more about offense. And I think the fewer possessions you have, the more important it is to be able to score on the short ones.
Yeah, but what inevitably happens with defense is that it catches up, right? I mean, 5 years ago when Mahomes came in the league, teams were averaging 30 points a game or more. And now they're averaging a touchdown less on average. That's not just because of circumstance, that the more you give good defensive coordinators and talented defensive players opportunities to see what you're doing offensively, the more they're going to catch up with you. And that's when they end up changing the rules to make it easier for offenses to score again. So to me, it's always, I hear what you're saying, but to me, if they kept the rules the way they were 10 years ago, offenses would be averaging like 14 points a game, no matter who's playing quarterback, because they would not be able to score. They'd probably have guys getting hurt left and right.
Yeah. Let's talk about the what's going on. First of all, we're brought to you by our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Free consultations. They don't cost nothing. Commissions. Nope. They don't have commission sales staff. So they're not pushing you for jobs you don't need. In-house crews. Yep. Everyone's a Gann employee. And every project comes with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt and Concrete keeps your parking lot safer. Keeps you focused on your business. Avoid unnecessary delays. Avoid liability problems in your parking lot. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor. All things parking lot. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Eagles, Lions, Eric, both go after cornerbacks. A lot of them. Do they solve their problems?
I think the Eagles got great value with Cooper DeJean in round 2 and Quinyon Mitchell, who first cornerback off the board where they took him. It was big. I mean, the Eagles' number 1 issue last year was linebacker. Their number 2 issue was the defensive backfield and inconsistency there. They shored that up. They keep a lot of picks because of the 7 trades that Howie Roseman made. It was a very good draft for them. I think Detroit, in addition to the draft they had, which is Terrion Arnold, falling to where they could trade for him, but they also got Carlton Davis in a trade. Like, that was a pretty good pickup for them as well. I like where they went in this draft, and the kid they got in the second round is also a pretty good player as well. So I like both, and for two teams that it's as much as people like to rag on Dak Prescott, the Dallas Cowboys passing offense is pretty good, and in the NFC North, if things turn a certain way, JJ McCarthy, Caleb Williams. And now Jordan Love turning the corner. If those 3 guys end up being a thing, the Detroit Lions' weakness won't be as hideable as it was this year, right? That you saw on Thanksgiving, Detroit had already kind of beat the piss out of Packers early in the year. They got to face Nick Mullins twice with the Vikings, and they got Justin Fields. When Jordan Love was on his game, the Packers killed the Lions in Ford Field. And so, it's clear that, that defense needed to get better. They whiffed on basically every acquisition they made last year and still made the NFC Championship game. So I like what they did. They certainly, they certainly patched up their one weakness, which is pass defense.
What do you think? Where do you put the Eagles and Lions? They needed DBs. They got them. Are they, did they catch up to the 49ers?
The Eagles have the better shot right now just because – actually, let me rephrase it. The Eagles have the better shot at being much better defensively. I think that the Lions did great with getting corners, but one of their bigger issues was just they need more pass rush, right? They need more help up front to take the pressure off the back end. But I love what the Eagles did. When you're getting two real first-round pick level corners, and one comes in the second round and one comes late to you without having to really make moves, I think that's that's a bonanza. And so, I think if you asked that team last year what their biggest issues were, and aside from the locker room stuff, which I'm sure at some point they're going to have to address and get figured out, being able to say you've got two guys in there you can put in and not have to worry about Darius Slay as much, have to worry about James Bradbury as much. They bring back CJ Gardner-Johnson, who was a big factor in their success. They spent a lot of draft capital on guys, mainly Georgia players like Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and Kobe Dean and Nolan Smith. So they've got a nice influx of young talent to work with. And I think the most underrated part of all this is that Vic Fangio is calling their defense now. And so you take those guys, those young guys, especially a guy like DeJean, and allow him to be a chess piece for you, a lot like what Tyrann Mathieu was for the Chiefs when he first showed up and what he's been throughout his career. But that's a nice selection to work with for a defensive coordinator. So I think they're going to be a lot better. Detroit's going to be good, but I think the Eagles are going to be much improved.
Eric, are the Eagles going to regret paying both wideouts?
Less than like the Chargers would have, right? Like the Chargers were the first team in NFL history to pay both wide receivers more than $20 million a year, but the Spanos family doesn't spend the same way that Lurie does, right? They spend in prorate. They are playing with fire because they sort of guarantee everything. They're like an NBA team. If you look at their salary cap books, it's hard to cut any of their players. So they believe in their player evaluation, I think, much more than they probably should, right? But those two players are pretty solid players. But it'll be interesting to see like whether or not they come to regret it. I think that they will come to regret it less than some teams do, but there's still a ton of risk there.
It's a lot of money in wideouts. I saw a set of the 10 top wideouts. 5 of them were on rookie contracts. I mean, what's the likelihood that you can have 2 of the most expensive paid receivers in football on the same roster? Devontae Smith actually at $25 million, where things are going.
That's kind of cheap.
It's not cheap,
yeah.
But it's kind of not expensive either. Yeah. Did they get it right with this move?
Look, I mean, you're always saying about Patrick Mahomes, keep him happy, right? Well, this keeps Jalen Hurts happy. And you're paying for it. What you're gambling on is that your defense, all this youth we just talked about, can stay cheap and be productive fast enough for you not to have to pay the price for not being able to go out and find more talent in free agency for that. I think that they were smart to let who was the pass rusher? They just would go to the Jets.
Hassan
Reddick. Yeah, I want to say Hakeem Reddick. Hassan Reddick. Eric's right. They are playing with fire a little bit, but they operate. The new NFL is about operating in windows, and those windows are 2 to 3 years. And so it's not about, hey, I'm screwing up my cap for the next 10 years with these guys. He's saying, okay, this is what I have for right now. We got a couple of years to figure it out with these guys, and if it's not working out, we'll go a different route. So I don't have a problem with it because I think it gives them a chance to still compete for a championship in the window that they're in.
Yeah, listen, I think it'll be interesting, and I think you're right. It's not a 10-year plan. They're paying their wideouts, and all indications are with the Niners taking Ricky Pearsall, Eric, that they're waving bye-bye to one of theirs? Deebo Samuel, Brandon Aiyuk, do you expect one of those, both of them, to be traded for camp?
It might be camp, but yeah, I mean, like this was the thing. We talked about this at the Super Bowl when they were facing the Chiefs, where they were, going into this offseason, they were going to have 5 non-quarterbacks with cap hits over 20 million. They traded Eric Armstead. That was 1. They restructured. That was 2. So now they only have 3. But Brandon Aiyuk, this is the issue. A lot of people will say, oh, you get out in front of the player and it ends up being a value. But in some cases, like with Deebo Samuel, they ended up paying the wrong player because, Brandon Ayuk's probably better than Deebo Samuel is, but Deebo Samuel is locked up here and it's harder to trade him. You're not going to get as much of a return. Whereas when you trade Brandon Aiyuk, you're going to get a bigger return. It's just going to be, you're trading the better player as a result of it. So I think they'll trade at least one. I think they'd rather trade Samuel than Aiyuk, but the economics of it might mean they trade Aiyuk first.
Which one do you think goes, Jeff? And who's in the market to get him?
Buffalo certainly is going to be a team that's going to be looking hard at what they have to offer.
Buffalo can't afford it.
Well, it depends on, Well, it depends on.
Buffalo can't move any money around, and I guess they could pay. Buffalo doesn't have any cap wiggle.
Right? Would it be Deebo if it was Buffalo? If Buffalo could they work his deal out?
Well, and I think
so the issue is
the problem is also
Buffalo literally doesn't have a restructure they can do to be cap compliant. Like Buffalo is 2.8 million under, and these are the base salaries they have to work with here. Josh Allen minimum salary, Von Miller minimum salary, Milano's $4 million, so I have a little bit to work with there. Deion Dawkins $2 million, Ed Oliver $2 million, Teron Johnson minimum, Dawson Knox $2 million, Daquan Jones $3 million. They would have to mass restructure all these players, which is kind of against what they're trying to do, which is like take a year and breathe a little bit. Like they don't have the cap space to take on a player in a trade.
Well, then there you go. I guess that's out.
Yeah.
It simply won't work.
Who else would be in the mix then? Would Carolina be an option? He's from that part of the country.
Yeah. That's not a bad one.
Carolina can certainly work.
Is Tennessee?
I'll give you the teams with the most cap.
Arizona.
Most cap room right now. Patriots, Commanders, Jags, Titans, Chargers, Cardinals, Eagles, Colts, Lions, Bengals. Top 10.
The Eagles have so much cap space.
Well, because they prorate, and then basically if they don't find something that they like, they just roll it over to the next year. That's how they do it every year. So basically it's the pay and push, and then if there's nothing to spend the cap space on, they just roll it over into the next year. There is a squeaky thing here, though. Post June 1, Tre'Davious White does come off the books for the Bills. So that'll end up being, if you go post June 1 on him,
10 million.
It does create 10 million, but still 10 million is not enough to get Deebo in the door, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like you can want to trade a guy, but who's going to get him?
Yeah.
Like, who's going to
Chargers? That's an interesting one.
Chargers is the team that they jettisoned the older wideouts. Now go get a new one.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is Deebo
kind of fits their personality?
Yeah, but is Deebo Samuel pissing and moaning on the sideline or about his contract all the time? Is that Jim Harbaugh?
No.
No. That doesn't sound to me like something Jim Harbaugh wants to deal with.
No, but I'm with Eric. I think of the two that gets moved, it's more likely Deebo.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. All right, let's talk a little bit about the gamble that the Atlanta Falcons made. This is all the uproar going and getting a quarterback after you already have Kirk Cousins. First of all, let's take a moment to celebrate Eric Eager, who weeks ago said Kirk Cousins was going to the Falcons. Now they're going to get hit with tampering charges because not only did, Eric was well aware that this was happening long before it should have been. So we'll give credit there. But then, Eric, didn't you even point to last week taking a quarterback putting the young quarterback behind the old quarterback. Didn't you even mention quarterback with the Atlanta Falcons last week? Let's start there.
Was he saying with the first pick, their first pick?
Yes.
Did it?
Yeah. He chirped about it. What?
Sometimes I know ball, people. Sometimes I know ball.
Yeah.
I have my ear to the ground here in the ATL, boys.
Did you know this was coming?
I thought it was JJ McCarthy. And because of age and everything, I thought it was going to be JJ McCarthy. Michael Penix was not in my I thought only 4 quarterbacks were going to go in round 1. I was an idiot on that. I thought that they could have picked quarterback because I'm hearing that Kirk Cousins, when he's going to Atlanta United FC games, he's going to Braves games, he's going to Hawks games, he's having a little bit of a limp that's different than what the Falcons expected. Because remember, when they tampered with it's not like Kirk Cousins came in here and they worked the guy out before he got that contract, right? They tampered and then they signed it at the whistle. So I think Kirk's less ready than people think.
But that's on them, right? I mean, that's the whole thing about this whole conversation that bothers me.
This whole thing's on them.
Yeah, but it's like it's still, no matter how you slice it up, they screwed it up, right? They either paid too much money for Kirk Cousins, or they fell in love with a guy after the fact who they knew was going to be in the draft, who they could have probably drafted anyway at that spot. Nobody was going to be surprised if they didn't take Kirk Cousins. They drafted Penix at 8.
I played this game today with Sam McDowell, because he was saying something similar. So you're saying that if you have a veteran quarterback already in place that you're paying big money to, and then you go out and use your first-round pick on a young quarterback, you're making a mistake.
Yeah.
So the Chiefs screwed up 2017.
The Chiefs already had Alex Smith in the house for 5 years?
But he was highly paid, and he was getting older.
There's a difference.
Yeah, but you're moving away from him.
Having Kirk on the books for $100 million guaranteed for the next 2 years is fundamentally different than having Alex Smith on.
Wow.
Where was
Alex Smith? A playoff game in 4 years.
Alex Smith had won 1.
But he'd been to how many postseasons had he played in?
Listen, I'm just telling you this. It's never a mistake to get better at quarterback. Now, I will tell you this. I wouldn't have given a guy coming off an Achilles tendon injury at 36 years old who doesn't practice on Tuesday, $100 million guaranteed. No effing way would I have ever signed.
That's the mistake.
That's the mistake.
Right, but once you've done that,
that's the mistake.
That's done. Right, that's done. Okay, so we all disagree. But then to turn around and if you believe in Penix, which I'm not sure I do, I still don't like whatever's kind of going on with this, right? This little flip thing he has. I don't know. I'm not a quarterback.
Rose left-handed?
No, he's got a little flip. It just looks funny when he brings it back. I don't know. Again, I'm not a quarterback
guru.
It's
funny when you're doing it that way. That's how he's throwing the ball.
That's what it looks like to me. And I've said maybe it's just because he's left-handed and I'm not used to watching that. But and everyone's like $17 million a year for Alex Smith. Yes, back when the top-paid quarterback was at 27. Okay, we weren't at 55 and 60 million for quarterbacks. So anyway, my point is, if you believe in Penix, and you're right, no one will ever even remember that it went down this way.
Well, my thing is, how much of that belief is based on what's happening with Kirk Cousins?
Because, well, that's the thing.
All of a sudden, now you love Michael Penix because you might have spent $100 million on a guy who's going to be skipping around.
Came out of the box all messed up.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Right. So
that's my issue. Let's spell this out. Let's talk about this in real form. Since my boss Thomas Dimitrov has been the GM, they have not had a better than 7-win season. 2018 they won 7 games. 2019 they won 7 games. 2020 they won 4. That got Thomas and Dan Quinn fired. 2021 they won 7 games. 2022 they won 7 games. And last year against the league's easiest freaking schedule, they won 7 games. Kirk Cousins is the best quarterback in NFL history at winning 8 games. So that's why they signed him. So Terry Fontenot could keep his freaking job. That's it, right? Terry Fontenot almost got his ass kicked out of that building for Bill Belichick and his cronies, right? Let's face facts. So they signed Kirk Cousins because they're like, we need to get that 8th win, and Kirk Cousins is elite at getting the 8th win in a season. So that's why they signed Kirk. Now they also have Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson, my former colleague at PFF, and Arthur Blank's kids, 28 years old, 32 years old, who are going to take over when Arthur dies. And I hate to sound crass, and they need something for the future. It's the same thing as the Jets. Everybody talks about, the Jets need to draft Brock Bowers because Joe Douglas is going to get fired if they don't win. Yeah, but what happens if they win this year? They need to have an actual team when Aaron Rodgers goes and starts smoking hookah on the mountain somewhere. And that's why they drafted Oli Fashanu and actually had a good draft. So this is to serve two masters. This is so that this freaking town can have an 8th win for once and that they can plan for the future. That's what they're doing. This is not sound team building because this team has not built soundly for years. Terry Fontenot just said that he has not had a fork in the road and had a draftable quarterback in his first-round pick since he's been there when Justin Fields was there at 4. This team has been mismanaged to this point, and now they're trying to solve two problems at once, and in the NFL, it's impossible to do so. That's why this looks awkward as hell. That's why it happened.
Yeah. I think the one thing that does make sense for me, and Eric kind of alluded to it, is that if you're the brain trust in Atlanta and you believe, hey, look, the best we can do with Kirk Cousins is maybe 10 wins, and we're still going to have to find ways to win a championship. If you think I think when they got Cousins, they sold the idea that they were all in to be a playoff participant. And I think now it feels like, we can only go so far with him, but this guy can take us farther. That's fine. But again, it's not how you build a team. There's easier ways and less expensive ways. That $100 million they dumped on Kirk Cousins, if it ends up being something that costs them better players down the road, is a huge, huge blow to that whatever they want to do.
I think, Eric, because you're the one who's talked about taking 2 young quarterbacks, right? You say like it's so important, and there's a bustability there. Take 2 of them. This would seem to be like somewhat following your plan. Although I know the difference is we know what the ceiling is on Kirk Cousins, right? That's the ceiling. You're saying the ceiling is 8 wins, but it is investing in the most important position, right?
Yeah, I think taking a quarterback here is never bad business, in my opinion. The mistakes are a couple things. The mistakes are, as Jeff said, paying Cousins in the first place, right? The Vikings found that out. The difference between the Vikings' mistake and signing Cousins is they were a 13-3 team trying to win a Super Bowl, and Kirk never had Super Bowl in him. This Falcons team is trying to win 10 games, and Kirk probably has that in him if he's healthy. The other part is Michael Penix is old for a rookie quarterback. That's why I said McCarthy in the draft the other day, because McCarthy's like 21 years old, and when he finally gets his chance to play, he'll be 23. Penix will be 26 years. I had my PhD when I was 26 years old. Like he'll be old by the time he gets out there. And that's like the one part about this pick that I don't get. Like I understand the parameters of what's going on. I don't understand the specifics. I don't understand I don't understand Penix. I don't understand Cousins. I don't understand but I understand 2 quarterbacks at once. The way the Falcons went about it is awkward. That's my point.
Well, the way they've explained it is awkward. You're telling me that 2-3 years down the road, there will be another quarterback you don't fall in love with?
Yes.
They just stop making quarterbacks after
Jeff,
this year?
First of all,
100%.
hold on.
Jeff, how many of these teams, if they just didn't try to explain themselves, would come out of this looking so much better?
Yeah.
He was if he doesn't play for 5 years, that means we're doing great. It's like, stop talking.
Yeah.
I have to object. I thought they summed it up perfectly and should have inspired all Falcon fans when Raheem Morris said he's Kelsey's girlfriend. What's her name? Taylor Swift. and he's Kelsey, the one everyone wants to talk to.
Yeah, which made no
That
sense
was
either. Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
I don't know what the parallel was he was going for.
No.
Like, if you're not funny, don't try to be funny.
No.
You got to know if you're funny. And Raheem Morris, number one, read the room. That was not the time to be funny.
No.
1, 2, you're not funny.
Yeah.
Don't try. 3, that made no sense.
Yeah.
Like, that made it even worse. It made it almost like, well, I'm just gonna make a joke out of the whole situation. No,
Yeah.
that was a big problem.
Yeah. Everybody's watching us now. Isn't this great? That's what we're getting paid here to do. Just create theater.
Don't risk accidents and liability in your parking lot. Get your parking lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot cuts down on accidents, keeps your parking lot as safe as possible, whether it's seal coating, striping, signage, concrete bumpers. In fact, replacing the entire parking lot. That's what Gann Asphalt and Concrete does, and they do it better than anybody else. They've been doing it since 1994. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. We say it many times, and it's always true. One contractor, all things parking lot, Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Let's jump to the Giants. Jeff, did they get it wrong by not taking a quarterback? It seemed like everything was there. Nobody was moving up. Could have had J.J. McCarthy. People had them moving to 3 to take Drake May, moving to 4 or 5 to take J.J. McCarthy. They stand pat. They have a shot at the quarterback. They don't do it.
Yeah.
They make a mistake.
Yeah. They should have done exactly what Atlanta did. If there was a team that should have made that move and would have gotten praise for it, it would have been the Giants, which is to say, take a quarterback who you can sit for some time while you figure out if Daniel Jones is worth what you're paying for him and can somehow stay healthy and can somehow throw more than 15 touchdown passes in a season. But yeah, I thought there was a chance they would take Malik Neighbors. There was a much higher chance that they would take a quarterback, just because you can't tell me that in that building there's a lot of faith in Daniel Jones. And once you're at that place with a quarterback who's been there that long, and I know there's been all these different things that have happened to him, and he's been hurt and didn't have help. But the coach clearly has a problem with him. The city doesn't believe in him. I imagine that the players in that locker room aren't crazy about him. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but it just feels like you had a chance to reset. And now you're in a division where Washington has a pretty good quarterback who I like in Jaden Daniels. Whatever you think about Dak Prescott, he puts up numbers. He's had 3 straight 12-win seasons, and Jalen Hurts was the runner-up for the MVP. And you're sitting there with Daniel Jones still. It's just at some point you have to accept that it's time to move forward.
Eric, did they blow it?
I don't. Can somebody explain to me the trade up for Drake May, which would have been what, like next year's first and a second, right? How
Hopefully they were offered.
And maybe I'm just
more.
like so how is the difference between JJ McCarthy and Drake May that much?
I don't get it.
Right? Like, Jeff, and I'm not a huge JJ McCarthy fan, but like at least Quasey, like, and
he played it right.
I'm not sure I love the Dallas Turner trade, but at least the Vikings said we'll give up this much for Drake May and we'll take McCarthy here. They very clearly demonstrated the delta between the two quarterbacks, right? This much is what we'll pay for Drake May. This as much as what we'll pay for JJ McCarthy. They revealed preferences. The Giants said we'll trade the world for Drake May, and Michael Penix and JJ McCarthy can go bleep themselves. Yeah. What the heck? How does that compute in my mind? Like, because I don't think that if you're hot and heavy for a quarterback, Drake May is a great prospect, and he was my second favorite one in the class, but he's not that much better than JJ McCarthy and Michael Penix and Bo Nix to be like, yeah, we'll give up our future for one of them, but we won't even give up our original pick for the other, for JJ McCarthy. Just what I don't get. Like, that one doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. And Malik Neighbors is a phenomenal prospect.
Yeah.
So let's take a shot at why Drake May would be so much more valuable than JJ McCarthy. Let's say it's true. Okay, let's work from that premise, because these many teams came to that conclusion. What do they see? I'll go first. He's bigger, and the Bryce Young thing scared the hell out of people. He does make off-platform throws, right?
McCarthy does that.
Not as much. And not that he can't do it.
No.
We haven't seen it. We saw it a lot more with Drake May.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's the big difference.
That is a big difference. What else? What else could be as to why there was,
Drake May
turned down all these, because the Patriots could have moved down and got J.J. McCarthy and had a bunch more picks.
Yeah.
And they said no.
Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams all played in offenses where they were allowed to do a lot more as far as showcasing their skills. And so their numbers are better, their amount of reps, the amount of throws. I would probably argue that J.J. McCarthy threw probably – Drake may have doubled the amount of passes J.J. McCarthy threw in his career easily. And so when you're a scout, you're a GM, you're looking at those things, you're able to see more things that allow you to project what he's going to be. The concern with McCarthy is that he's just going to be a guy who's his floor is game manager.
Eric, what do you know the numbers on that? Listen, I can remember going back to when Gil Brandt told me number of starts is important. If a guy only has a handful of starts, don't take him. And that's kind of been backed up. We saw that with Mitchell Trubisky. He didn't have that many starts, and he wasn't able to overcome it. We've seen some other guys overcome it. But there is a thing. I heard a stat somewhere. Isn't there something about quantity of throws is an indicator of success in the NFL? If you've thrown it a lot, one shows you can throw it. Two, it shows they had confidence in you to throw it. You were successful. They kept letting you throw it.
I think it's like 1,000.
There was some stat this year that I heard, and that's where J.J. McCarthy's getting dinged. He has the quantity of starts. He started for a couple of years.
Yeah,
he has the wins. But is there – do you know of the numbers? I'm thinking that are out there that quantity of throws is an indicator for success in the NFL?
Well, it just means we had Trey Lance, right? Trey Lance had so few not only pass attempts and starts, but also starts when trailing, starts when not using play action, passes when not using play action, passes when trailing, everything like that. It does matter. Well, it just widens the distribution, right? We've seen guys like Steve McNair. He played a lot at Alcorn State, but it was not representative of Division I football, that kind of thing. In the perfect world, you want a guy who has played a lot in high level SEC kind of football, right? And everything beyond that just adds noise to the situation, uncertainty into a situation that's already incredibly uncertain.
Yeah, I just thought there was some stat that if you had X number of throws.
No, Bill Walsh, you're right. Bill Walsh had that belief too. there's a lot of Bill Parcells, Bill Walsh, a lot of older coaches had that theory about. It comes back to how much you can see him do, how you see him respond to stuff, how you see him adjust. But that's the knock on McCarthy. It's just that because he played, people will tell you the epitome of the concerns about him go back to the Penn State game last year when he threw 11 passes and they won the game. And he didn't throw a pass in the second half.
Yeah.
To be fair, though, Joe Montana threw 515 passes in his college career, 25 touchdowns, 25 interceptions, and 52% completion. Now, ran an option offense, but it's just uncertainty. The less you throw, the more uncertain it is, right? That's just the way it goes.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, we know there's going to be some busts, and which ones is going to be fascinating.
Let me ask you this before we go. If J.J. McCarthy is Brock Purdy, is he a success?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
If he plays as well as Brock Purdy, is he a success?
Yeah.
Oh, in my book, yes.
Okay. So if he becomes that for the Minnesota Vikings, that's a huge win for them.
I mean, I don't know why Brock Purdy led the league in yards per attempt.
I agree. I think it could be Brock Purdy at the very least.
Yeah, I do too. But, here's what you don't know. Who's going to piss themselves against an NFL rush? Like, that's what it comes down to. Who does the homework? Who studies the plays? Who can read the tape? Who can figure it out? Who can digest it? And then who craps their pants against an NFL rush? Right? Because a lot of guys look good in college. Brady Quinn looked great at Notre Dame. He was the worst I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He was terrible. He was terrified.
Yeah.
He couldn't get it to the running back fast enough.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't think it's because the guy's gutless. It just all went to a fog. As soon as that NFL rush came.
Yeah. It's different with Justin Jefferson, though, out there.
It does help.
Things easier.
It does
still catch it, bro.
Are the Dallas Cowboys screwed, Jeff?
I don't think that they're screwed. First of all, I think there's a lot of people who obviously there's Cowboys fatigue because they're always being discussed nationally. But people act like this is a horrible team all of a sudden. And yeah, they've got to improve their offensive line. And yeah, they took some hit. They got to find a running back. But the quarterback still was in the MVP race. The receiver is still one of the best of the game. Michael Parsons is still a one-man wrecking crew. They're getting Trayvon Diggs back, who was an all-pro corner. DeMarcus Lawrence can still play. I mean, there's still plenty to like about them. And so I just feel like people act like, why aren't they doing more based on how last season ended? And at the end of the day is they can't afford to do more. They don't have the contract, the cap space to do it. So they're kind of stuck dealing with that. But I doubt
but that doesn't mean they're not screwed because there's a reason. Like they have no cap room. That's their fault.
Yeah, but I still feel as if they've got enough talent to go out. They've got enough talent to go win double-digit games. So to me, that if you're good enough to get in the playoffs, you're not screwed. I think they'll be a playoff team.
Eager, thoughts on the Cowboys?
Oh, the Cowboys will still win 12 games this year. They have good coach, good quarterback, good offensive line. Not as good as last year, but good offensive line. They got a guy in the draft. They always draft well. And they have a lot of talent on defense. And they got Mike Zimmer, who I think is a pretty good defensive mind. And I think will do a lot. Will freshen up that defense a little bit. So, yeah, they're going to win 12 games. This is the NFC.
They've got Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb holding out. Or at least looking like that's going to happen. They're not, doing the mini camp thing. So it's all going to come together. McCarthy's going to handle it all.
They've gone through worse down there. I'll say that. It really, look, I mean, again, it's from the outside looking in. Yeah, it is hard to figure out how it all comes together. But ultimately, the key thing is figuring out what they're going to do with Dak Prescott. And it seems like they're pretty comfortable saying we're just going to let it ride this year. And that's the case. And yeah, maybe you got to be a little more creative. Maybe you got to wait on Micah Parsons, get a little more creative with how you pay CD. But, though there are worse problems to have when you got that kind of talent you're dealing with.
When you say, Eric, they got a good offensive line, you have Tyler Guyton at left tackle?
They might move the other kid over the right tackle to left
I would say that their offensive line has potential.
Tyler Smith, right?
Tyler Smith from guard.
Yeah, Tyler Smith is a good player.
Wasn't he a left tackle in college?
Yeah, let me look at where they're starting here.
They would move Smith out to left tackle, and then they would put Guyton at right tackle. Zach Martin, they lost their center. So,
They drafted a guy? They drafted a center.
Yeah, Zach Martin. I mean, Steele's a rough one over there, but like they have Martin and Smith and Guyton. It's a good start. Dak does protect his offensive line pretty well.
Cooper Beebe.
It's not, I mean, they have an issue in the backfield, but they have Lamb and Cooks. Those are two good players. Tolbert's, I think, a good receiver out of South Alabama. Like and McCarthy's better than a lot of people give him credit for.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Did the Chiefs solve their offensive issues? And if they did, does that, Jeff, make them overwhelming favorites to win again? They're already the favorite, I think, Eric, aren't they?
I thought it was
favorite to win again?
Chiefs are minus like 2. Yeah, they're overwhelming favorites. Minus 220 or so.
They're minus 220 to win it all? or to win the AFC?
No, to win the division.
No. I'm talking about winning.
Win the AFC
all.
West.
Did the moves they made, does that, Jeff, make them overwhelming favorites?
No.
If they solve left tackle and the stretch the field, which limited their offense last year.
Well, I don't know if they've solved that. They've drafted players that I like, but I don't know if they've solved it. I mean, a lot depends on if those guys can come in and play. If those guys go through growing pains, which is completely normal for first-year players. The thing people got used to with the Chiefs is like, just because they've won 2 championships in a row and 3 overall in the last 5 years doesn't mean that everybody who walks in the door is going to be a star. And so, yeah, I like Xavier Worthy, and I like the kid from BYU at left tackle, but I still think they've got a lot to figure out. I mean, this team's championship hopes will always come down to Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones. If those 3 guys play at a high level, they got a great chance to win. If any of them struggle, it's going to be a different story.
Whenever Rashee Rice gets back, are they better 24 or better 23?
24, right?
Better offensively or just
all around?
Team?
Do they lose Snead? We know
he's better.
Lost Willie Gay.
I think better in 23. The defense was so good at the end of the year last year that I don't know if you can count on that. Just to quote Eric, I don't know if you can count on that being the same thing this year. So they may have more potential offensively, but I still think losing L'Jarius Sneed is probably a big hit to what they want to do.
Okay, so are they better, Eric? Your thoughts? Better 23 or 24?
I would say 24 just because I think, to Jeff's point, the defense will regress, but I also think that offense will get substantially better.
Okay. So 24, they're better.
I think so.
So are the Niners?
They were not a good football team last year.
Are the Niners better or worse? So why are they favored? They lost the championship. The Chiefs are better in your mind. Niners are worse. Why are they still the betting favorite then?
Well, because the Niners were a better team than the Chiefs by multiple points on the betting line for most of last season. I think that the Chiefs got hot and the betting markets were afraid of betting against Mahomes. So that was mostly it.
I mean, the Niners roster is better than the Chiefs.
I mean, have you seen the Niners offensive line?
Well, that's the only place I would say, but I think if you went up and down every unit, you'd probably say that they've got better talent, except for maybe quarterback.
Isn't the Chiefs' defensive line better now?
Same they had before, right?
Same guys. But
Eric Armstead.
The Niners do have losses. They lost Armstead. They lost South Carolina kid.
They pick up somebody else.
Dre Greenlaw's not playing this year, probably.
Greenlaw's out.
Who did they pick up a defensive
So they have
tackle?
Javon Hargrave and
Bosa.
Javon Hargrave, and I want to say, did Kinlaw return?
Was it an edge they picked up? They picked up a defensive lineman somewhere.
Let me look. But not of the Chiefs caliber. So the Niners defensive line is Javon Hargrave,
Malik Collins,
Collins, who sucks. Bosa and Leonard Floyd sucks. So that's defensive line's worse. Linebacker, they brought in Devondre Campbell, who's okay for sure.
Wow.
Dre Greenlaw's not playing until October, November. Warner's good, so that they're probably okay at linebacker. The secondary, the Chiefs are demonstrably better, right? Hofanga's coming off of an ACL. Their free safety stinks. Lenoir stinks. Ward's good. If Ward was better, he'd be in.
You think their safeties are better than Hufanga?
I mean, the Chiefs. I mean, Justin Reed is just as good as Hufanga coming off an ACL. And then the Chiefs have better depth. Like, Chiefs have better depth than the Niners across the board. Right? The Niners are very, like, they have no depth. Like, along the offensive line, they have John Feliciano's their second best lineman.
I think they're skill
and I'll
players,
tell you
though.
this.
Someone named
like
Colton
skill
McKivitz
players.
plays right tackle for them.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing that I'll throw out there.
Yeah.
Let me see Christian McCaffrey go hang 2K from the line of scrimmage again. Let me see him be healthy a whole year.
Yeah. But he's still Christian McCaffrey. I mean, we're saying the same thing about Kelsey, right? Is he going to be healthy the whole year?
That's a good point. It's a good point.
True.
It's a good point. Yeah.
True.
No, listen, I got, I don't have a rebuttal to that, but I just think it's kind of interesting. They went head to head. Chiefs won. I think the Chiefs have had a better off season. And the Niners, by the way, are probably not going to get to the season, as we talked about earlier, with Aiyuk and Samuel.
I think the issue with the Chiefs not being favored is that they got a tougher road to go through. When you look at what Baltimore is, the Bengals being better, the Jets, if they're healthy, the Texans, the Chargers being in their own division now, there's a lot more and a really tough schedule. I think it's going to be a lot harder for them to get back in. To bet on a team three-pitting is –
schedule looks tough, but do we agree? Like, I know the Broncos ended the streak 4-0 against Denver and Vegas.
I don't know if I'd go there.
Okay. You don't think so?
I mean, I don't think – I mean, and this is no knock on them. I think it's just a reality. They aren't, like, head and shoulders above everybody else in the NFL. I think they're just better at knowing how to win games. So if you're saying they could have games like they had against the Raiders last year in Christmas or at Green Bay.
I think I'll say this, and you're right. It's an if. If they got it right with those first two picks, they're going to storm through the regular season. Now, it's a tough one. They're not going to go 17-0, but they'll be 14-3, and they'll be definitively the best team. If they got those two right.
I think you're shortchanging. I think Buffalo is going to be better than people think. I think you're shortchanging the Chargers. You're shortchanging the Texans.
Better.
What's that?
Buffalo's not better.
I'm saying that I think it's funny to me that we can sit here and say the last 2 years the Chiefs, no one was that high on them and they wound up winning championships, but nobody else in the league can look like crap going into a season and then find a way to win games. The only team in the league that can do that is the Chiefs.
Well, the Chiefs are the one team that keeps doing it, though.
Oh.
Right?
I don't know. I think the teams I just named is still.
Yeah, but like the Rams did it once. The Rams won it from a 4 seed. Like, it can happen to other teams, to Jeff's point.
It can.
The Bucs won it from a wild card spot. Yeah.
Are the Ravens better?
Probably Brady's most impressive Super Bowl from the 5 seed.
Do we think the Ravens are better?
I love the Ravens to death. I'm impressed with I'm perpetually impressed with them, but they lost a ton of people. Mike McDonald. They lost. They lost like half their defensive staff.
I don't know.
Right?
I'm with you on the difficulty of the schedule. And if they screwed up at left tackle and Worthy is a bust, which many wide receivers are, then they've got problems. But if they hit on those two.
Yeah. Look, if Worthy is, like I said, if he's Jalen Reagor, if he's Jameson Williams, if he's one of these guys that takes a while to get going, and speed guys take a while to get going, if the left tackle is a question. And let's face it, if they have injuries, like all these things are part of the NFL season. And again, they're a really good team. Wouldn't surprise me if they win a third championship in a row because they're that good. But it's also not like we're sitting here, this is huge gap between them and the rest of the NFL. And obviously the betting markets say the same thing.
We got a lot of time to break it down. We still got a lot of weeks before training camp gets going. We'll do some more draft analysis next week here on the 2 Deep NFL podcast. Remember, we're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. For Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the 2 Deep NFL